everyone. Welcome to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. This is your host, Becky McNattin, along with Tara Martini. We are glad to have you listening as we live and share stories of mental health.
So a few weeks ago, we did a show about self-criticality, and we highlighted that which is hard to believe, that about 80% of our thoughts are negative. 80%. Yeah. That is so mind-blowing.
I know. And then last week, we did a show about social media and whether we should process emotions online. We talked about how to make the decision of whether to share ourselves via social media outlets.
So that's a few years ago. About 2/3 of American adults say social media has a mostly negative impact on the way things are in our country today. 2/3.
2/3.
Now, here's the thing, though. 2/3, but how many people still do it?
Yeah, so we see negative content and we think about negative things. We are bombarded by negativity, and it's had me thinking about what happens when this happens. Right now, so many of us are sitting with helplessness and maybe even hopelessness about our world. If you are, I'm right there with you, everyone.
Yes.
Both of which are shows just by themselves. But you and I both know, Tara, that when we have an extended time frame of an intense emotion, sometimes we tune out.
We do.
And maybe that isn't because we are negative people who don't care. Maybe it's because we are empathic people who care a ton. Maybe apathy and empathy are a continuum and perhaps even a cycle that we as humans connect deeply with one another. And when we get so much of this in ways we don't know what to do with, we detach. We might need to, right?
Right, just for survival.
Yeah, apathy is often thought of as the opposite of empathy. Apathy is the lack of emotion. Medically, it is the absence of goal-directed activity. In the therapy realm, the realm you and I live in, we think of it as emotional detachment. Kind of like if people say, I don't care.
Yep.
I don't feel anything.
Yep.
Empathy is on the other side. This is the ability to experience what another person might be experiencing.
And it is more than, I feel sorry for that person.
It's the real capacity, well said, it's the real capacity to comprehend and identify the thoughts and feelings of someone else. It is perspective taking while saying, I feel with you.
Yes, rather than I feel for you.
Yes. With empathy, we open ourselves up so other people can experience us, as well as open ourselves to gain awareness of others. But right now, we are all together in a time where many of us feel powerless, helpless, and unable to influence outcomes around us. We feel collectively stuck. What do you think about this, Tara?
Everything you just said, I think, rings true and to the core of so many of our listeners.
Yeah. Like the soul of
our soul. And because we're looking at the soul of our country or our whatever it is, and of our world, and feeling so negative and overwhelmed, right?
Yep.
Not just feeling worried. And so it's that piece of, well, what do we do with that, right? And for those of us that have a large amount of empathy for others, known as empaths, it is exhausting. Right? And overwhelming.
Yep.
Where sometimes I think, if I just didn't care, right? I could just ignore everything.
Yeah.
But it's that piece of we can't. We're not physically able to do that. But sometimes we find ourselves, in order to survive, like you said, to reiterate the point that sometimes we have to detach a little bit in order to survive. Otherwise, it is too overwhelming. And to share with our audience, that's okay.
Yep.
It is okay.
And that it's part of the intertwining of apathy and empathy.
It absolutely is.
Oh, yeah. Well, I love this discussion. I can tell it's going to go lots of places. Right now, we are going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned for more on empathy and how to assess apathy in your life. Thank you for listening to Feels Out Loud.
You gotta find your people, then you'll find yourself. Express yourself.
Welcome back to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. I am Becky McNattin, along with Tara Martini. let's dive right back into apathy and empathy and this continuum. So, Tara, I want to put my clinical hat on for just a couple minutes and share about the science of empathy.
Love it.
It's cool stuff. And for anyone who knows me, you do well. They know how much I love talking about empathy.
I think we talk about it every day at the office with at least one other person.
I think we do. So I love it. In order to talk about the concept of empathy, we really need to understand what is happening in our brains. Mm-hmm. And much of empathy is connected to things called mirror neurons. I'm going to say that again. Mirror neurons. This is like a mirror that you would look into and see your reflection back, combined with the word neurons, which is a type of cell that sends and receives messages from the brain and brings these to the rest of the body. All of us humans have these mirror neurons. These allow us to learn by observing people do things around us. And then when we do, parts of our brain are activated like we are doing it. It's the coolest thing. These neurons allow us to imitate what we notice and replicate the behaviors or actions ourselves.
This is so cool.
Have you ever been in a group where someone yawns and then all of a sudden you have to yawn? Yes.
All of us, for sure.
This is an experience called emotional contagion, where mirror neurons are picking up on the experience of someone else, and then our bodies also experience that too. When we observe another person, we all, as humans, tend to make meaning about this immediately. We decipher what action is being taken and why. And that second question of why is super complex because we have to think about what might come next.
Right.
We have to anticipate it. People in psychology call this intentional understanding. We love to have terms for all the things. Mm-hmm. Our mirror neurons try to predict what is going to happen next. Think about it as context. These mirror neurons help identify intention based on cues around what is going on. This is key in empathizing with someone else and is a huge aspect of emotional processing.
Huge. And it's that piece of, I think, for people to look at it, that it is a continuum of, and I don't know enough of the science behind, do some people have more mirror neurons than others, of the piece of how important it is to be able to pick up on cues. And I think we're going to get this to a later episode down the road of
well said.
The importance of cues.
Yeah.
Right?
It's amazing on how our mirror neurons have capacity to pick up on cues.
Well,
that parts of the brain get activated by our own emotions and are actually activated by other people's emotions, only by observing them. We can mirror the brain state of another person. So I want to give an example here because sometimes that helps. Let's think about a person breaking apart a cardboard box at work and getting a paper cut with that cardboard. At my home, we call these cardboard cuts. Mm-hmm. They walk inside the break room and they talk about this cardboard cut with their coworkers and they describe it. Everyone makes a face, says, "Oh," and one person said, "That hurts so bad."
Yes.
That is mirror neurons influencing empathy. People are feeling the cardboard cut without actually being cut themselves. They are experiencing with their coworker what that coworker is going through. Just a few days ago, someone in my own family grabbed a container out of the fridge. This is an experience probably all people have had. My family member opened it up and then smelled it.
We all have.
It was old and probably had been there in a while. My family member made this face of disgust. And without them even saying anything, I wrinkled my own nose. And I said, "Gross." This is mirror neurons. We are feeling what the other person is feeling without actually experiencing whatever they are. And this is empathy.
I love this.
With empathy, we see someone experiencing an emotion and our brains activate as if we are experiencing that emotion too. So have you used mirror neurons, your own mirror neurons lately, Tara?
Oh, my goodness. Yes, absolutely. And I am just so stoked that we're getting this topic out there and educating people because it is so fascinating, right? Mm-hmm. All of us have heard the word empathy, but to know the science behind it is always so cool, right? I, as a teacher, would always say to my students, there's one lesson in particular, we talk about the 5 senses. And I'd be like, today we're going to learn the science behind the importance of 5 senses.
Yeah.
And it was this idea of, well, rather than just throw this obscure topic, it's not us just saying it's important. It literally is science. And this is a great example of this.
Yes, and we don't necessarily ask our mirror neurons to do this stuff.
Right.
They just do.
Well, yeah.
All the time.
So it's the idea of when you say, have you been using your mirror neurons lately? So I had a small procedure done where I have stitches on my eyelid. And my daughter, right after the experience, it was as though she was experiencing the same thing. Like when she saw the stitches, she kind of touched her eye and was like, oh.
Well said.
And every time I'd have to be like, can you help me with the cream or grab my ice pack? It was as though she was experiencing it before. And she wasn't just observing. She was doing more than observing.
Yes.
She was feeling it.
Yep.
And that is a true example of the mirror neurons working every single day.
Yeah. And some of us might be tuning into the emotions of others more often or more deeply. Mm-hmm. And we get messages of emotions throughout every single day, which is a lot, especially if you're tuning into them deeply.
And it can be overwhelming.
Particularly right now, it seems like there is pain, stress, distress everywhere. And one possible outcome of too much exposure to emotion without caring for ourselves is getting desensitized. Mm-hmm. Tara, what do you notice about yourself if your empathy bucket is getting full?
It's funny you should say that because I was talking with my own therapist this morning about this. And she said, ugh, you're such an empath. And I said, ugh, it's so exhausting. Because the more my empathy bucket gets full, the more exhausted I become because my energy is not just staying within me, it's being dispersed to other people and their issues. Mm-hmm. And it's just that idea of, am I able to create boundaries, right? I said to a teacher recently who I was working with about her classroom of students, and she said, I just feel, because she's such a high degree of empathy, she says, I feel I'm failing my students every single day. And she's just drained. And I said, honey, you saying that, 1, means you are a fabulous teacher.
Yeah.
2, you provide your students consistency and love and support every single day. And you have done that for 8 hours every day. What you need to know is rather than taking their stories home with you, you need to say, self, when I leave this school, I have given them my entire heart for those hours.
Yeah.
And that is more than some of them receive when they go home. Maybe they do get a dose of that when they come home, but the key is that love and support you've given them for 8 hours will sustain them till the next time you see them.
Till the next day. Yeah. And you mentioned it is exhausting when our empathy bucket gets full.
It is exhausting.
It is actual fatigue.
Yes.
There is a term for that. It's called empathy fatigue. Mm-hmm. But we notice, you sort of share that you notice your whole body feels tired. Dr. Kristen Neff shares a quote that I want to process with you, Tara. The quote is, feeling and absorbing the stress, fear, and sadness of everything around us, we can start to feel overwhelmed. Our own stress response may be chronically activated by feelings of empathic distress. It may feel as if we're soaking in suffering. And you mentioned in that interaction with a teacher may be soaking in suffering.
100%.
But what does this quote make you think about?
It makes me think of every person who this rings true, that there are some of us that can't help but do it, and we're not doing it intentionally, right? I am not intentionally saying I am soaking in the suffering of our world today or of my students or my clients. It's just something that happens, right? Mm-hmm. And it is that idea of, it is very easy for people like us to get overwhelmed because we're looking at the big picture, but it's reminding ourselves that our life is not just about being drained and sitting in the suffering with others. Mm-hmm. We also have to have a certain amount of self-care and self-awareness to protect ourselves.
Well, and right now it feels like we're soaking in suffering.
I think we are.
There is, whether or not you define yourself as an empath, we are exposed constantly to the deep emotions of other people and recognizing true impact that we feel a sense of powerlessness or helplessness to affect any outcome or change. And so in that soaking in suffering, or that constant exposure to, as Dr. Neff says, chronically activated by feelings of empathic distress, that's what's created, is empathic distress. We feel with the person. We aren't having that necessarily having that experience, but we are having the feels like we're having the experience. Right. And there is an enormous impact on us about that.
It's huge. Think about the impact physically, what that does to us. Think of the impact of our mental health. I drive my daughter to school. She goes to a rather large high school, and there's a very busy road. And so sad that a couple months ago, there was an accident where a teenager lost his life at this intersection. Most people, including my daughter, the day that it happened, and as we watched the streetlight come back up, being repaired, it was like, oh, that's so sad, right? For me, it was profound. I cried when I saw the spot. I felt so deeply for the parents of that child, and it stuck with me.
Yeah.
I still think of that every day I pass that intersection, and this happened months ago. And it's that idea of that impacted my energy level, my mental health, my physical health, right?
Yep.
Because then you can go down a path of like all the other people you feel sorry for, and the suffering, right, that's taken place. And it's that piece of really being mindful of what impact is this having on my mental and my physical health, and then what does that look like, right? The idea of being, people say, becoming less empathetic. It's not saying we are becoming less empathetic. It's saying I'm taking a step back and going, I still acknowledge the suffering, but for me, I need to protect my heart a little bit. But how do you do that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, it's causing me to wonder about, to the person who is listening, who thinks they might be becoming less empathic, how to even notice that.
Right.
Because when we describe things like empathy fatigue, you mentioned feeling tired. But sometimes we don't even know what's happening until way after it's happened. So thinking through some of the either physical changes, the emotional changes, maybe existential changes, in recognizing that we're becoming less empathic. You and I work in a field that we have supervision, we have consultation, we have coworkers that maybe are attuned into noticing this. But it is not lost on me that a lot of the world does not have this.
Oh,
and
for sure.
So there aren't people who are necessarily going to come up to you, if you're listening, and say, I wonder if your empathy bucket is full.
Right.
Which we do at work. But
yes, our work is rooted in empathy.
We work in a very interesting bubble. And so to the person who is listening, who's saying, I wonder if I'm noticing myself becoming less empathic, that I might be experiencing empathy fatigue. This is becoming
Burnout.
A lot. I'm soaking in suffering. I would say you might be thinking about burnout, whatever that is defined for as that person. They might be thinking about withdrawal from their people, from their moments, from their life. And when I say withdrawal, I mean like the things that maybe you even previously were doing. You're like, I don't feel like. I just don't feel like it.
And how many people can relate to that?
And that sense of almost indifference. If you're a person who doesn't typically feel indifferent, but all of a sudden you notice that you are, and when I say indifference, I'm saying things like, I don't really care. I don't have a thought about that.
When normally you would have been very impacted and had a thought or a feeling about it.
Yeah. And for me, when I notice that I'm becoming less empathic, I go usually to the opposite side of the spectrum. I get real angry. I'm very irritable.
She does, folks. She does.
Yes, I do. And I realize that my threshold of patience, of tolerance for things, I am real quick to anger. And I've noticed that a lot about myself recently. For me, powerlessness and helplessness, a floodedness of other people's emotions tends to show up in my kind of vengeful or angry sense about the world in general. But we're talking about kind of two polarities, because that could be, a high, intense, angry emotion, maybe even irritated on the lower side, but rage-filled.
Right.
To the other side, where it's a real decrease in emotional expression, maybe instead of feeling a lot. If you're a person who feels a lot, you don't feel at all.
Right. Which you literally went from having a significant amount of empathy. Now you've gone down that continuum, and it's almost that you've gotten to the point of apathy.
Yes, which you bring up a transition to this, how to assess apathy. So if you are a person who perhaps notices those empathy fatigue ideas and are present in your life, how to assess for empathy? Well, you and I came up with 4 questions that people can ask themselves, and then we're going to chat about these for a little bit.
Yeah.
First, have I lost interest in things I enjoy? 2, are my emotions kind of flat? 3, am I withdrawing from things? 4, have I stopped caring? So 4 really simple questions that you can ask yourself. Am I in a space of apathy?
Yes.
What would you say to that, Tara?
Well, and I think, too, it's so important to distinguish that some of these questions are questions we ask clients leading to depression, right?
Yes.
That we're not talking about, am I withdrawing from things, and there's that piece of deep sadness and whatever. What we're saying, it's not the deep sadness piece. It's literally the lack of things.
Yes.
So am I withdrawing from things and simply just withdrawing, right?
Yep.
Are my emotions kind of flat? Flat as in not sad, just flat as in non-existent.
Yes.
Right? And so it's so important to distinguish those two, and that piece of how easily the audience can literally just think about, wow, have I lost interest in things I enjoy? To where not the sadness piece, but I just don't care.
Yeah. Well, we did a show several weeks ago about disconnection.
Yes.
And that there is a function behind that.
There is.
So as you're saying, it isn't necessarily an emotion on the side of longing or despair or depression. It might come from that because it may come from that floodedness, as we talk about soaking and suffering, as Dr. Neff said. But it is the absence of feeling that we have tuned out from feels. We have almost unplugged ourselves, as we talked about in that show weeks ago, and that there is utility to doing that sometimes. It's okay to swing to apathy. You mentioned that at the beginning of this show, that there is a function to, if we can recognize, oh my gosh, there's a function to this. It's all right, because all feels come with energy, and an expensive energy. And there may be a requirement for us to say, oh, okay, where am I at? I'm not feeling anymore. There's kind of a numbness about that, actually.
Numbness is a great word. And
it can be a food for thought around assessing, am I in an apathetic space right now? Am I experiencing apathy? It isn't helpful to stay there.
Right.
Because we are connected human beings. We are people who need community. We are people who need to be with other humans
Right.
in a
We're
social
human.
way.
Yep.
And so it may, asking ourselves those questions without judgment, may cause us to say, okay, well then what do I need to do about this? But
Right.
maybe this is a spot of, in a continuum of apathy to empathy, or a cycle.
Right.
If it is circular, of there is a moment here that I have for myself to think about, this is self-defense or protection.
Mm-hmm.
What if we reframed apathy as not a bad thing, but actually as a moment in time, a signal from your body to your brain to take care of you for a bit, and turn empathy inward to be able to live empathy outward?
Right.
What would you say to that, Tara?
Oh, goodness. And we're going to touch on this in a future episode coming up really soon. The idea of so many of us have that cycle, correct? And then we reach that point of apathy. But there are, I bet, quite a few listeners out there right now thinking, I feel that way all the time. Just apathy. And it's that idea of trauma or something
Yeah.
that literally said, self, you are not going to dive deeper and be impacted by this anymore. You are simply just going to be apathetic about everything. And that is your heart and your mind and body protecting you from all the things.
Yep.
Now, and that is a real thing. People that struggle with that ability to feel the feels.
Yep.
And many times, though, that happens because you're protecting yourself. And so it's that piece of acknowledging to everybody, yes, you may be listening to this on the radio going, yes, cyclical for sure. But you also might be listening right now going, hold the phone.
I'm always there.
I am always in a state of apathy.
Yeah.
And why is that so? Right? How did I get there?
And that we can do things either way to recognize the function of apathy.
Yes.
We can do things around self-care that would, when we're in those spaces of apathy, to recognize, all right, maybe I need to fill my own bucket right now. And I would be, in those moments, I would be curious. We've talked a lot about curiosity on this show. And I mean about ourselves and others. We've talked about it a lot in relationship, but be curious about yourself. Ask questions about you rather than assuming. And lots of times, we just did a show recently on self-criticality, we lean into whatever our experience is with a, you shouldn't do this, or you,
Right.
to be curious with ourselves, to listen intently to other people, to listen intently to ourselves, and paraphrase back some things that we're hearing. And this might be body messages if we're focusing inward. This also could literally be sentences or words.
Right.
But reflect back feelings that we hear, not just content, if we're trying to build empathy. What else would you say?
It is all those pieces about listening intently. It is also looking at if you find your place in, or you find yourself in a place of apathy. Sometimes not going to a direct place of how can I increase my empathy, rather than look at it and go, what can I do for myself involving self-care that is going to bring me some joy, right? That's going to bring me less feeling of overwhelmed, less sadness, right? We're not going to sit in the suffering. And you'll find the more you increase your self-care, whether it's going out with a girlfriend for a drink or getting a massage or going for a walk outside, you're going to find yourself then building a capacity to become more empathetic, right?
Kind of a recharging of whatever those things are for you in attunement to self.
Right. Because what we don't think about is, I think therapists all the time spew like self-care, self-care. But we don't think of how we can do that and things we may not otherwise connect it to. Like the piece of when we become apathetic, well, what do you mean increase your self-care and you'll get to be more empathetic? It's that idea that because then your body's allowing more space, right? You can breathe a little bit more. That empathy bucket, then there's more space in it to allow for our empathetic selves to seep in.
Well, yeah, if we think about it as a battery, if we have to plug in something to charge it, well, one, not every charging cord charges all of the things. That's why there's about 1 million of them at my house.
Yes, or in this room.
In this room.
Yep.
But we do actually have to plug in to recharge in order to have capacity to do the things that just as electronics would need to do.
Right.
Then we can do those things.
Well, and you just mentioned this in an earlier episode. It's that idea of that is giving you the energy, right? And through that toaster, I think you mentioned, that's plugged in, it gives the energy that it needs.
Yep.
And so it's that idea of us doing that for ourselves.
Yep. Well, and any time that I've struggled with apathy, making my world bigger has always been helpful for me in a stepping outside of my comfort zone. Sometimes it's new experiences that cause me to take a new perspective. Sometimes it's just that allows me to change the channel for myself. I'm thinking about something, as you mentioned, taking us out of the soaking and suffering. For me, rather than a dive deep to explore that thing,
right,
asking myself, what else?
Yes.
And expand my world a little bit. Go try something new. Go for a walk in a new spot. Go stand outside and in the cold for 5 minutes. All sorts of things that cause us to step outside of ourselves that would automatically create a brand new perspective.
I love that. I love that so much. And that it's that idea of we don't always have to dig deeper to solve something. Sometimes we just have to move that energy elsewhere. And it can have just as great of an impact.
And those strategies, when we focus them inward, they are also things that allow us, if we were looking to build empathy, do allow us to put those external in paying attention to nonverbal cues. Well, if we do that with ourselves, we have better ability to do that with other people.
Right.
If we're willing to be curious with ourselves, we have better ability to be curious with other people. I would be silly if I didn't acknowledge in this episode that based on what is going on in our world right now, that there is utility in apathy.
Thank you for bringing that up.
And I feel very strongly, if you are listening and you are thinking, well, it isn't my job to not be apathetic, or I'm mad that I'm even apathetic. I am because things are so bad right now. That the world and power systems in our world want us to stay apathetic. And I need everybody who's listening to think about the function of being able to do that and of why that's important. If we stop caring, we stop caring. We separate, we distance, we isolate, we tune out, we turn off. All of the things that you and I mentioned at the beginning of this episode around apathy and how to assess for apathy, that happens when we get flooded by feels.
We do. Well, it's that sense of being overwhelmed.
Yes.
What do you do when you're overwhelmed? One of the things you can do is become apathetic.
Yep.
I just don't care then.
And power systems need this because the collective isn't the collective then.
Right.
When we are alone, because we are too overwhelmed, we are not connected. And I get it, but I'm going to challenge everyone listening today to think about how systems of power might just want this to be the outcome, and they might need this to be the outcome. Apathy is not empowered. Empathy is.
It is, and it's what will make things better.
Empathy is curiosity about others, it's participatory, it's perspective-taking, and as we said earlier, it's a desire to know and understand intention. Do not hand your power over through disengagement. People do not hand your power over through disengagement, and I struggle with this every day. I struggle with this every single day because...
And our clients struggle with this.
Yes,
right?
Because I found myself so angry. As I said, when I get apathetic, I get angry.
Yep.
And sometimes when I get angry, I get vicious. I tend to get very vengeful. But that is what power systems want me to feel right now. It is what they want me to feel, and it's how they're fed and how they can continue to exist because we hand power over through our own isolation and our own lack of engagement.
We do. And on that note, someone recently said to me in the office, they said, I think we had all made the statement, we're very overwhelmed, like with all the things we're seeing on social media and with the president and the government. And someone stated, but this is what they want. They want us to be overwhelmed, right? Mm-hmm. Because if we're overwhelmed, we don't know where to go, right? We start drowning, and they want that. And as I thought about it is, what they want is for us to become apathetic, right? I'm so overwhelmed, I'm just not going to feel.
Yes.
I'm so overwhelmed, I'm not going to fight for any cause because I don't even know what cause to fight for because there's so many.
Yep.
That is the opposite of what we should be doing.
Yep.
It is saying to our audience and to one another and our clients and everyone is, please continue to be empathetic human beings, right? Because apathy keeps the issues going.
Yep.
Empathy creates solutions.
And if you find yourself in a space of apathy, as we said, be kind to you.
Yes.
Care for yourself so you can care for and with others.
Right.
Don't judge the apathy. And if you notice other people who are apathetic, perhaps they're flooded with empathy. Perhaps they're soaking in the suffering.
Right.
So we can lean into that with kindness, that their apathy may be the functioning utility of something much deeper or much bigger. So don't judge that you're feeling apathetic, but also say to yourselves, if there's something I can do right now, it is to hold my own helplessness. It is to hold my own helplessness. It's to respond to that so I can have energy and recharge to do the thing.
The power to do it. Yes, the power to do it. And it is, we are blessed, the two of us, we do have the capacity to sit and say those things to ourselves and then turn it into action, right? And so, but it's also our obligation for those people that don't have a voice or don't have the strength to do it. Well, then let's do all the things. Let's do the things to give people the voices. One of the things I said when I was on Twin Cities Pride Amplified, the radio station, I said, here's what I'm going to do, because we did an episode around the inauguration. And I said, my response is, I am matching all that hate with love. The more you hate, the more I'm going to love.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm going to keep doing.
Yep.
Right? Because what we don't want is an apathetic world.
Yep. And if we can recognize, oh, that's exactly what somebody else wants me to do, then use that.
Yes, when your stubborn little self, you dig those heels in and you use it.
Yes.
You want me to be apathetic? Honey bunny, that's not going to happen.
Yes, I'm going to do the opposite. And if we say it's a continuum or a cycle, know that in here, how to resource yourself to stay in that empathy space. Find your people and community, stay connected, because that is the way to sustain the energy. But be kind to yourself in the cycle, and know that by itself is power.
Yes.
That by itself is power. And what do you think would look different, Tara, if we used empathy more?
Oh. I think, and I said in an episode, you had asked me a similar question. I said, the world would just be a more beautiful place. We'd have less conflict. There would just be more love and more solutions.
I feel like there'd be so many more question marks because we'd ask more questions.
We would, and more conversations around those questions.
Yeah, we would be dialoguing so much more. And there would be so much less assuming, because we would say to ourselves, well, I don't know. I don't know your story. I don't know. And we would feel those moments with somebody else. We'd tap into that and not just discard it from a desensitized space, as we seem to be doing all the time right now.
Well, we'd be leading with curiosity.
Yeah, we would. Well, so much to think about here. Wow. We are headed to a commercial break, but when we come back, we will talk through listener questions on apathy and empathy. Feels Out Loud. We'll be right back to process your thoughts in just a moment.
You gotta find your people, then you'll find yourself. You gotta find your people.
We are back again with Feels Out Loud, and this part of the show is where we talk through questions from you, our listeners. If you have a question related to mental wellness, sharing feelings, or our topics for each week that you would like us to process through, please visit our website at becomingtogethermn.com and find the Feels Out Loud page to submit a question directly, or you can always email us at contact@becomingtogethermn.com. We really, truly want to hear from you and want to know what you are wondering about.
Big thank you to our listeners who have sent in questions about apathy and empathy for this week. And our first question is a little bit more of a disclosure statement and then an ask. Mm-hmm. This listener says, there's so much anger right now. Well said, listener.
So much.
How do I empathize with that? It makes me shut down. And I would say, listener, yes. Yeah. You are sharing what so many of us are feeling, which is what we highlighted in the end of the last segment, this collective shutdown because there's so much anger. So first, be kind to you. Anger is everywhere, as you said, and for a lot of us, that's an intimidating emotion. Mm-hmm. People are set off about all sorts of things, and I kind of wonder, I have a little growing hypothesis, that we just want to be mad to not acknowledge something else that's going on.
Right. Well, it's that piece that anger is a secondary emotion.
Yes.
Right? It is what is lying underneath the anger.
Yes.
That is the most important. But it's so easy to simply just say, I'm angry.
Yeah. So to people in your life, because I'm just kind of writing in my head that this listener has angry people in their world.
Right.
For you to sit with, perhaps this isn't about you. Their anger is about their own helplessness. Think about anger as the secondary emotion or masking something else. Their anger is their own helplessness. Perhaps it's also about their own apathy. As I mentioned, I'm an angry apathy. Sure. I'm an angry apathy. Empathy isn't about giving a pass to allow angry statements or mean things to be said to you. It isn't giving a pass. It isn't saying, well, you just get to do whatever you want.
Right.
It's about recognizing that you don't know their story. You don't know their story. So if the angry people around you are your people, ask them about it.
Yes.
Ask them about the emotion. Ask them about their experience. Tell yourself, I'm going to stay regulated in this moment. You're real angry, but you're my person and I don't know your story. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you a question about it. And if you find yourself getting angry, seek to process what the emotion is under the anger. I was just talking to somebody else about their own sense of, I just want to protect you from hurt. Mm-hmm. And you're feeling hurt, so now I'm feeling angry. Mm-hmm. And you're not actually mad at them, but it might come across as mad at them. Yep. You're just feeling protective of the other person's pain. So is it your own hurt or your own helplessness that's underneath your own anger? What would you say, Tara?
Well, and it's that piece of when you say, and it was such a strong statement of, you don't know their story.
Yes.
So many people, when it is your people, right? Your people who have been your source of support, who have known you inside and out in every chapter of your story, when they are angry, how often, because we feel we know everything about them, yeah. How many times when they're angry do we actually stop and pause and say, what is their story or what is that first emotion?
Yep.
Because we just assume, well, we're not going to learn anything new.
Exactly.
And oh my gosh, if we just paused and went, I don't care. Like, you've been married for a really long time. You know your husband well. But if you assumed every time you went into a disagreement or whatever it was, if you went into it, I'm not going to learn anything new about him.
Yep.
You'll never make progress.
Story is always being written.
It always is.
There. You know, story's always being written. And we are at the end of our show for today. Thank you for listening this morning. Join us next week as we talk through more emotional topics. And in the week ahead, be kind to yourself. Remember that a connection fosters wellness, and your voice is one the world around you needs to hear. Please share yourselves, friends.
Some will, some won't. I wanna feel just